Everyone, welcome to Grid Live Wrap Up. Big weekend of racing, NASCAR at Sonoma, wine country. A lot of drivers not tasting good wine. Shane Van Gisbergen getting some great wine today. INDYCAR Series at Iowa, 2 races, 2 winners, and finally Chevrolet's on the board. Plus IMSA, Supercars Series, MotoGP. Formula E has a brand new world champion and the grid ranking week 15. All right here on the show. Joe Samaniego with me. We have Matthew Bro from GridNetworkTV.com and from Grid Tonight, Kobe Lambeth. A big thank you to our Patreon investors, Colin, the show, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew for investing in the Grid Network each and every month through Patreon. Link in the video description. You can click there. You can also do Buy Me a Coffee, YouTube Super Chat. We'll thank you on the air as the Super Chat continues coming in, including on the next episode if you're not watching us live. And of course, share your question, opinions with us right here on the Grid Network. Love to get the chat started up, Matthew, with NASCAR and a flurry of late cautions. I knew this was going to be something where it's like, okay, we might have a calm race and then a flurry of late cautions. The last couple times we haven't seen that here, but we did today. Shane Van Gisbergen dominated this race. But the last caution, essentially, we had he stay out, Chase Briscoe stay out. 13 cars, I believe, stayed out while we had Chase Elliott, most of the others go in. So that final restart when we had 5 laps to go, you had a mixture of cars with newer tires, the old tires. At the end of the day, though, when it looked like Chase Elliott could be that one potential threat, he goes wide, loses position, lose ground. Nothing for Chase Briscoe, nothing for Shane Van Gisbergen. And Shane Van Gisbergen channeling his 2023 Max Verstappen, sporting a Red Bull livery car, gets the win, and just one of those deals where for Shane Van Gisbergen, a big win, number 3 of the year. And of course, again on a road course, but was this his most impressive win of the 2025 season?
I think, Joe, absolutely. It really was. And for the people who watched the pre-race, I had to bring out the hat again. A coworker gifted it to me at Watkins Glen, just to bring out the hat before we say anything about SVG. I know the fans and how they feel in our comments usually. But no, without a doubt, Joe, this was the most impressive Shane Van Gisbergen victory in the Cup Series level, at least. I mean, if you look, I love statistics. Also, I want to shout out Red Bull, finally back in victory lane in NASCAR. It feels pretty damn good to see that happen. Hopefully the diecasts get produced. But yeah, Shane Van Gisbergen, he had 39 of the fastest laps of the race. These are just green flag laps. The lowest running position Shane was in this entire race was 6th. Yeah, 6th, and that was because of having to pit. So we tried to flip the stage. Still ended up with many stage points. He scored 59 total points out of a possible 60 or 61. He led 97 laps, Joe, which is 88.2% of the laps. And if you don't think that is the most dominant Shane Van Gisbergen performance we have seen in quite a while, even like going back to Supercars, it was. So it was really impressive, and it's just so funny to see the comments like, "Oh, they signed him. He's only good on the road courses." Who cares? He's got 3 wins now, 3 road course victories, including the street course, obviously. I mean, impressive signing, Justin Marks Trackhouse. We all had that feeling back in 2023. They made a smart decision bringing him over for Project 91, and now it's just so funny. He's got 4 Cup wins just a couple of years later, 3 of them in the last 5 Cup Series races. So without a doubt, it was his most impressive win. His betting odds were plus 125 or plus 150, which, again, is absolutely absurd in motorsports unless like you were 2023 Max Verstappen. That was really the last time you saw something like that. And then Palou's championship odds this year are like minus 6,000. But you know what I mean? So, yeah, this is definitely his most impressive victory. I don't think anyone had anything for him. Even on the old tires, he showed that he's the best in the business. And in making that case, we talked less than 24 hours ago, maybe a little more now at this point. Is he the greatest NASCAR road racer of all time? And I know it's young, but I think he just continues to add himself into that conversation. He's got the most next-gen road course victories, and he's only been in the next-gen for however many road course races. So, yeah, most impressive by far.
by far the most impressive. I think the big key, especially we know there's rumors of another new street course coming in. SVG is going to be an easy favorite for that. If Mexico comes back or if it's Montreal, these tracks where NASCAR drivers have less experience and the teams has less notes, SVG is going to be a favorite to win. But here, I really thought we would see more competition, especially when the stage got flipped. But as you said, he only fell to sixth place. I couldn't believe stage two. It's like, he's going to win the stage. This is impressive. And sure enough, gets around Kyle Larson. I was starting to think, could he use up his tire too much around Kyle Larson? That didn't seem to be an issue at all. Just nobody had anything for him. In the chat room, Scott says, I know Boris said was NASCAR's best road course racer for a while. Boris said had a big fan following. And it just, I'm glad he brought up Boris said, because Boris says one of those drivers, he could have easily gotten wins, but just seemed one thing or another thing. Ron Fellows have success in the Xfinity, Truck Series even. Cup Series just always seems to slip away. SVG not letting that happen, even with the flurry of late cautions, just handle it like a pro. And this is definitely a very impressive win from him. Sonoma, a track that is a lot more harder to pass. Watkins Glen's going to be the next one. That's going to be one I think SVG is going to be truly excited about. But it's going to be a while till we get there, so he's going to have some work in the ovals, but still, 3 wins from 5 races, 2 consecutive wins. Now tied when it comes to wins with the drivers of Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin, Cristopher Bell. He is the 3rd seed driver when it comes to the NASCAR playoffs. If SVG wins at Watkins Glen, that will put him at over 20 playoff points from wins alone. So we know that's going to be over the 20-point number when you count in the stage wins he's gotten so far. And entering Sonoma was only one driver with 20 playoff points entering Sonoma. That was Kyle Larson at 23 points. Overall, can SVG stay in the top 4 seed area of the NASCAR playoffs with only 6 races remaining left in the regular season?
I think so. It's going to be a little tougher, though, because you got some tracks coming up that guys like Christopher Bell, William Byron, Ryan Blaney are all right behind him in the playoff standings, but that can easily win at. And no offense to Shane, but he probably has one more victory in him, possibly. Not in the whole season. I think he's got at least 2 with the Roval, obviously, late in the playoffs. But, yeah, I think he can easily stay up there. You know how impressive it really is to have that many playoff points just on wins, and was it 1 stage win, 2 stage wins? And he would have more, obviously, if he didn't flip the stages. It reminds me a lot of this shows just how important 2 playoff points are. A 2021 Kyle Larson, I don't even know how many he had, but I think it was in the 30s heading into the playoffs. So, yeah, shout out to like Shane, really. I think that team now, Trackhouse, has got to focus on for the rest of the regular season is not going to be a lot of flipping stages, obviously, because of the way the schedule is. They only do that really on road courses. But I think they got to really focus more on stage points now than finishing results. I know that sounds a lot, but try to keep getting as many points as possible. And I think a prime example of that today was someone like Bubba Wallace, who ended up like 26th or something, but he still scored more points than Ryan Preece, who he's battling on the cut line, who finished 12th because he stayed out and got 15 stage points. Much needed for that battle. And it shows how important it is. That's single-handedly keeping Bubba Wallace in. That is how good he's been during the stages. His results obviously haven't been the same. But for Shane, I think he's got to have a similar focus to that. Just get as many points as possible. Because no offense to him, but on the ovals, he's not going to really finish in the top 15. He has a couple times. I know Martinsville almost had a top 10, but he's just got to work on getting as many points as possible. And then do the same thing you did today, same thing you did at Mexico City. Even Cody, he had a very good performance as well. Excuse me. Just all the road courses, Shane Van Gisbergen. He's just got to keep doing what he's doing. But yeah, the points. He's just get as many points as possible, Shane. He's now up to 26th in the standings. doesn't seem as bad. He's getting closer to Josh Berry, closer to Austin Cindric, guys who have won already. So you can't really say that conversation like, oh, he's so far down in the points. But, he's getting closer and closer to these guys who have already won races this season. I know he's got 3 of them, and he's up to, 26 in the standing. So I want to hear your take on that, Joe. Just kind of what does he do from here on out?
Yeah, as you mentioned, he's 26 in the points, 17 playoff points. You look at the playoff points, the most still Kyle Larson, 23. Then you got Denny Hamlin, 19, and he's ahead of Cristopher Bell by 1 point. Considering those are the only drivers that have 3 wins each, unless we see another driver get 2 more wins and just start dominating races, I think it's going to be really hard for them to get around Shane Van Gisbergen. I mean, even William Byron, who is the points leader right now in the standings, only 12 playoff points. As FCG could go ahead and do as you say, position himself, if there's a caution at Dover next race weekend and most of the teams are pitting before the stage break and he could go out there, maybe put himself in a situation where he could get some stage points and especially that elusive playoff point, oh man, that's going to be a big opportunity for him to go out there, get that, build that up. Because I think if he is in one of the top 4 seeded spots, he's going to be pretty safe unless he just crashes out at Darlington, has a horrible race in the first 2 races of the round, and gets eliminated. If he has a solid race at Darlington and then goes on to, I believe it's Gateway and then Bristol. Bristol, I mean, he said in post-race, he might have well been driving backwards that he was so horrible. But if he could have 2 solid races and a good day at Bristol, all of a sudden, he is in the round of 12. You got the Roval. He's going to do pretty good at that. If he gets a win, you're in. So even if he has a lousy round, get through that and to be in the round of 8, 1-8 shot at a championship, that's going to say something for a rookie. And this will be the first time we'll have such a rookie in this format of championship seasons, where in the past we had the old Chase before the playoff picture was introduced, and then, of course, the Winston Cup era, where really Jimmy Johnson was like one of the only few times a rookie was leading the points. 3 wins, just that was it. And SVG, he could still get a 4th win potentially with Watkins Glen coming around the corner. In the chat room, Denver, SVG is still showing up the Cup field. This is why he's a legendary Supercars driver. Very good Supercar driver. Overall, seeing him in that Red Bull, for a lot of Supercar driver fans, that has to feel pretty good. It's just remembering him in the Supercar Series day. And then, of course, Denver. There are rumors that is flooding the Super 2 paddock in Supercars that Jesse Love from RCR is considering coming down to Adelaide Supercars Grand Finale. Man, I know we've been talking about this rumor. We've been hearing about it. How exciting would that be to just see Jesse Love is talented, but just to start seeing potentially Cup Series drivers, even Xfinity Series drivers. We want to try the Supercar Series because now this Cup Series, even if it's 6-7 road courses, they mean something in the championship picture.
Yeah, I think that'd be awesome. I mean, there's always been conversations, whether it was Kyle Larson and then that falls through, so on and so forth. But yeah, Jesse Love's a kid who just loves the race. He'll get in a Legend car, he'll get in a Trans Am car, a USAC. Jesse Love loves the race. And for him to be that guy, it would show a lot that, if possible, I know the travel logistics would be difficult, but you know how awesome that truly would be to flip the script on him. We've seen Will Brown. We've seen, I believe, Cam Waters multiple times. We've seen SVG. Let's send some guys over there, right? I think the jet lag would be really funny, going at least 12 hours difference forward, more or less, not backwards like this New Zealand, Australia guys have to do. But yeah, I think there's a lot of talent in the NASCAR field, especially Jesse Love is a superstar in the making. I think he already is a superstar. But to go over there and do that, I know we've talked before, Connor Zilic would be a really awesome addition to Adelaide. I think that would just a lot of awesomeness with these guys. I would love to see someone even like Michael McDowell, a veteran of the sport, go over there. Someone like Chris Buescher with the Ford camp. I know they did stuff with, I believe it was Alpine with Castrol and stuff like that as a sponsor. It'd be really cool if he could do a swap with maybe Thomas Randall in the Castrol car over there for in Supercars, or even somebody. It sucks because Riley Herbst, I know Monster Energy, I'm thinking of sponsors, do a swap with Cam Waters over there, but he's unfortunately Ford, and all the Monster guys in NASCAR are Toyota now. But yeah, so that's kind of my long answer to that. I think that's a good question from Denver. I would love to see it. I think most people would love to see it. The swapping of motorsports, just guys trying new rides pretty much, it's exciting. It makes us happy here at Grid Network.
Yeah, it's always fun to see drivers crossing disciplines, and of course, you also have the idea to maybe a driver like Connor Zillage, as Cody has mentioned as well too, very talented. I mean, the battle between Zillage and SVG, I cannot wait for Tuesday to hear Ben's thoughts on that. Of course, Ben over at Sonoma this race weekend. That's why Grid Encore on Tuesday night. So mark down your little notepad. Tuesday night, Grid Encore. Ben will be back from Sonoma to recap that thrilling finish. Also in the chat room, and we encourage everyone, especially if you're brand new, subscribe to our channel from Kobe. Well, I'm assuming over in New Zealand, that Kobe 24NZ. There should be an extra point for good burnouts. Oh boy. We've been seeing how Prime was judging the burnouts. I think that would be really hard. And then I could just see the conversation of, do we really want an extra point for the burnout? I do think it will be a award, some sort of award for like, hey, the best burnout, cash prize recognition at the final race of like, hey, the fans voted, or somehow you're awarded the best burnout endeavor. He will walk like a man when he walks outside Adelaide. Adelaide, a great circuit.
Definitely.
So overall, I mean, it's exciting to just see all this crossover between everything, and then what SVG is doing for the sport. Now firmly in the playoffs, third seed, ahead of Christopher Bell. Christopher Bell had a good day overall. I mean, did the best he could. But one thing, his teammate, Ty Gibbs, oh man, this really awakened his critics, I feel, because we saw when Ty Gibbs got pushed by the 17th team on track. During the following pit stop, it appeared Ty Gibbs, especially from the onboard camera, swerved his car into the RFK pit stall, contacting the front tire changer. And after both pit stops were completed, that front tire changer went over to Ty Gibbs, let them know what he thought about that move. NASCAR looked into it and said, no foul, no penalty, no wrongdoing. Was this a display of frustration, do you think, by Ty Gibbs? Or do you think he truly didn't do anything wrong? Because in the post-race interview, he said, I had the right of way. I know the rules. Do you think he still should have deserved some sort of penalty for how he entered his pits?
Oof. Yeah, I'm probably going to get some flack in the comments here, but I think I disagree with a lot of us at Grid Network. I'm more of a I don't really know type of answer, because in all honesty, what else was Ty going to do there? Like, he turned, but they even said Steve Letarte mentioned, and I think a lot of these guys, to be honest with you, in the booth will criticize you immediately, whether you need to be criticized or not. But for them not to criticize Ty about this, I think it kind of shows that there really wasn't much wrong with it, because I don't know if it was Parker or Jamie McMurray or Adam, someone, and said, like, how's he really supposed to turn in the pit stall? Ty was right. He did have the right of way. And granted, do I agree that it was a little aggressive and what happened shouldn't have happened? Yeah, absolutely. He definitely, it's just the coincidence, or I guess, of the fact that an RFK crew member for Brad Keselowski's team was standing in the pit box ready to go because Brad was pitting at the same time as Ty. It just so happened that he clipped the tire, clipped his hand. So I think I can't say it's a racing deal, but I think it would kind of be really harsh, personally, if he gets a penalty. Maybe a financial, like a fine, but how else is he supposed to turn in the pit box? And if you see the clip of him doing it, it does kind of look bad, especially from the RFK perspective, the overhead camera. But at the same time, how else is he going to enter the pit stall? Like, you visualize the empty pit stall and how he would enter. He would do that same thing if Brad Keselowski wasn't there. So I don't think Ty changed it up, even seeing a crew member there, but it could have ended up very badly. So that's my thought. I guess trying to play devil's advocate, maybe they should talk to him about it. But I think it was honestly the right decision not to give him a penalty. But maybe on Wednesday or Tuesday, whenever they do the financial report and the penalty report, maybe we'll see a monetary fine. But yeah, truly, I don't really think it's something worth discussing any further. I think it's just you go on to the next week. But because it's Ty and he's young, immature, then that's why we're having this conversation.
At first, it looked like from that onboard and the initial discussions, like, especially with the context, like, okay, the Ty made a mistake, and I was on board that I think he should have gotten a penalty. Then we heard from NASCAR looked at it, no penalty, and I remember thinking, if I was Brad Keselowski, I still want to go send a message to Ty Gibbs about what just happened on pit road, and that's really not cool. This is a big safety issue. But then looking at that top camera view, looking down, the only thing I could think of, and this was where I'm not 100% sure on the rule, looking at the camera, we all know that orange line to guide the drivers into pit road. Ty Gibbs was on top of that line, maybe slightly over it. And that's the only thing I was wondering is, like, is there something about how far can you be over on top of that line getting in? Because we know he's trying to get the best angle in pit road. So I started thinking more, and I was like, man, maybe NASCAR did the right move to not penalize. But as you said, if they do something on Tuesday saying, hey, there's going to be a monetary fine for we felt that was really cutting it close, we want to send a message to the drivers. Let's reemphasize, you got to be safe out there on pit road, especially. And whatever they decide with the orange line rule, go from there. Because I think it's just one of those deals where it was just a scary deal on pit road. Now, in the chat room, let's go ahead and check out the chat room. Denver, so if you hit the guy and he's severely injured, still not a penalty. I think that's where we get into this hard discussion, because if that had been a serious injury, and it doesn't take much when you got a 3,500-pound car, hits your hand and tire, yeah, he just twisted it, but it could have been easily, if we're talking a fractured wrist, all of a sudden now I think there's a really good case for a brawl between the two pit teams of you just injured clearly one of our teams. And this is where I think NASCAR's in a really hard spot. And I sort of wish NASCAR maybe did do that penalty, like, hey, tail end the longest line, the next restart, Ty. Because, hey, Denver does bring up a good point. If that guy was injured, where will we be? And I guess, Matt, do you have any follow-up, especially the position NASCAR's in, if that was the case?
I think it's truly a scenario-based thing. I just think, I guess, all the ducks were in a row. I can't really think of the terminology. It just perfectly lined up for a fact that we have this conversation. Because if it wasn't an RFK pit box and there wasn't a car coming behind Ty Gibbs pitting at the same time, this wouldn't have happened. It just so happened, coincidentally, that of the 36 other cars in the field, it just so happened to be a teammate of the driver who moved Ty Gibbs in turn 11, which was Chris Buescher, and they just so happened to be pitting at the same time. I really think, other than that, if he did get hit, if it was someone like Carson Hocevar's crew members or somebody like Tyler Reddick's crew members, I really don't know if there was any different. I just think they had to look at it more just because of the fact that it was Ty Gibbs versus RFK. That's how I feel about it. I can definitely see why other people would disagree too, but I just think it's more of a, in order to have this conversation, you have to have three things line up, and it just so happens to be, of all the different possibilities, that all three of these things line up, having it be Ty Gibbs specifically, having it be RFK teammate and then having them pit at the same time with stalls right next, or I guess in front and behind each other.
Yeah, if it was another team, like you said, I think there would have been some discussion, maybe a little bit of coverage, like, oh, close call. But I don't know if we would have gotten that same reaction from the booth, from the media at all. This is definitely something I think NASCAR would want to discuss. Is like, okay, how do we ensure somebody's trying to get in their pit stall, but you have the other pit crews out there? What do we do? NASCAR, I think they might be going to be looking at this a little bit further throughout the week, and we might get an update. And of course, if we do see an update, definitely, of course, Grid Tonight, that's where the update would be shared, because Grid Tonight, your weekly motorsports news program. So have an F1 style pitting every other there in place. So have an F1 style pitting every other there in place. I think this is just one of those deals where, I mean, it hasn't been a problem in the past, and thankfully NASCAR at least has those orange lines. Because if he had gone over that orange line, that would have been a penalty, driving through too many pit stalls. This might be something NASCAR is going to have to just simply revisit and just see where it goes. Overall, though, I think one driver that is switching the narrative to a positive light, potentially, Ty Dillon, his Cinderella movement is continuing on the miracle run of this number 10 team. Last lap, last corner, he pushed Alex Bowman out of the way to pick up that position and advance to the final four with John Hunter Nemechek, his opponent, down the other side, Tyler Reddick and Ty Gibbs. Now, I assume nobody had this final four in place. If you had John Hunter Nemechek, Ty Gibbs, you had Ty Dillon and Tyler Reddick, which I think you pointed out, all the drivers with the first two letters Ty in their first name are in the final four. You need to share that with us on social media and share that with NASCAR. NASCAR should at least give you something for protecting that correctly. But I got to say, from the start of this playoff bracket where we were all in Atlanta just watching our brackets getting busted left and right, and the criticism of the move, and okay, this ruined it because what's the point? But now seeing this Ty Dillon run, is the tournament regaining attention because of the success of Ty Dillon?
I guess yes, right. I truly believe, Joe, that people who don't watch NASCAR don't give a dang about this tournament at all. And I think that's part of motorsports' fault, not promoting the incredible Cinderella story. I posted on X or Twitter, and it was funny. I think a colleague PR member actually liked the post immediately. I put that Ty Dillon is having a more impressive run in this tournament than I've ever seen in any NCAA tournament. I think, no offense to like UMBC and the other 16 seeds that have ever won multiple games, but what Ty Dillon is doing from barely making it in to beating Denny Hamlin and then beating Alex Bowman and then beating Brad Keselowski the week before that, that's freaking awesome. And especially now, the way he moved Bowman, too, is a lot of people. I was listening to the INDYCAR on the NASCAR scanner on the app just because that seemed very exciting. And hearing Ty scream, and then I sent a message to our Slack chat, like, I think they did it, LMAO. And they did it, LMAO, right? So this is Ty Dillon has been putting on such an incredible performance. And I think he needs to make the championship. Like, no offense to John Hunter Nemechek. They're going to Dover. I think NASCAR is going to want Ty Dillon to do that. I think they're going to want him in because the other side of the bracket is very tough. Ty Gibbs and Tyler Reddick have been incredible lately. And I think Ty Dillon, 8th at Atlanta, 20th at Chicago, 17th at Sonoma. Interestingly enough, that is the first time Ty Dillon has had multiple top 20 finishes in a row, dating back to when he was a petty GMS Motorsports number 42 driver in 2022. where he did it multiple times in the Cup level that season. And most recently, it was at Michigan, Richmond, and Watkins Glen, and then even Daytona. He had 4 in a row where he finished in the top 20. Other than that, he has not. Obviously, he wasn't full-time after 2023 went down. He raced with Colleague, Team Amerivet, Richard Childress in the 33, I think, even had a race. And then obviously he was racing in the trucks with Rackley Warsaw and so forth. But Ty Dillon, you gotta love it. You really do. And I think $1 million for that team, I don't know how much they'll get after taxes, but people don't realize how expensive motorsport is. And $1 million might not go a long way like people think it would. But for a guy like Ty Dillon, who is worse than like 31st or 32nd in the points, for him to get that and him and the Colleague teammates to get it, like I said on the show on Saturday, the pre-race show, what I've heard from the inner workings of the sport is Ty Dillon's somebody that almost everyone loves. He's one of those guys who he will do anything for a sponsor. If you want him somewhere from 8:05 to 8:10 in the morning and he needs to be somewhere else at 8:15, he will be with you at 8:05 to 8:10. So I think no better guy can really get this done from what I've heard, and I think a lot of people are truly rooting for him, especially on this Colleague racing team. So, yeah, I think it's awesome. And I just, like I said before I started this long conversation, I just think, unfortunately, that not a lot of people are paying attention to this, and they should be. And, yeah, I just – you love to see it, the 32 seed taking on the 12 seed for a chance at $1 million to make the $1 million one. So you got to love it, right?
That's the thing. I feel the fact that when you think of course, the NCAA tournament is the big tournament that a lot of folks follow, March Madness. And it's the Cinderella stories that capture people's attention. His route, defeating Denny Hamlin, Chase Elliott, now Bowman, and here he is in the Final Four. I think it has done something where, well, for one, we're talking about Ty Dillon now for the last 3 races, where traditionally we would not be talking about Ty Dillon moving Alex Bowman out of the way for a 17th place finish. We would not be talking much about what he has done this season. In fact, on the show, we have not really talked about it until this. And just to see what he's doing, now he's got some big tests. Dover, I think, is going to be very challenging, but I don't think John Hunter Nemechek exactly has the biggest advantage over him in Dover. And then you're going to have that race facing Tyler Reddick or Ty Gibbs in the finals. If it's Ty Dillon there, get one of those two, that's definitely going to be a David and Goliath. And I just think, considering where I was, especially, and maybe other fans too, where after Atlanta, I was like, well, my bracket's busted. Why am I gonna? What's gonna happen? And then just to see this miracle run going, it's like, this is okay. How far can he go? How far could this little team go? And it's just been, for me, yeah, my bracket I thrown out long ago. I probably threw that away after Atlanta, but now I am looking forward to what did Ty Dillon said after the race. I think it has shown that magic where you have a Cinderella story and it's captivating for audiences. It can draw positive attention. The one thing I still ask NASCAR, do not start this playoff bracket challenge again at Atlanta. Don't do that. Yes, that's how Ty Dillon got ahead of Denny Hamlin, but we can't have this kind of madness where everyone's bracket's busted on the first race. Let's have Atlanta be Final 4 or 8 race. So 8 cars in the field. Something more reasonable, in my opinion. With that said, of course, next weekend, Dover. So we'll be following all the NASCAR news leading up to Dover. And then, of course, Dover. We're coming down to it, man. 6 races left before the start of the playoffs. So definitely it's going to be a lot of fun to see what happens with NASCAR. And before we let you go, we got to ask you, what is your one shining moment?
Oof, you have so many, and I know you and Kobe are going to be talking about so much after this. I think you got a lot. I think one of the main ones is obviously Shane Van Gisbergen this weekend in that sense. And two, I think anyone named Tyler, I think really the fact that there are three Tyler names, I know Ty Gibbs and Ty Dillon go by Ty, but there are three Tylers in the NASCAR Cup Series, and it just so happens to be all three of them are going to be in the Final Four. So I guess that, but no, in the sense it's got to be Shane Van Gisbergen and NASCAR. If you look at what IndyCar, I'd say Alex Palou, again, learning how to win on ovals. And then Brock Feeney as another one, Supercars. I'm trying to lead into what you guys are going to be talking about. And then I think the main one, too, is Oliver Rowland absolutely putting on a clinic in Formula E this season. I think he deserves that. I know you guys are going to touch on that a little bit later. But yeah, so those are my 48,012 shining moments from this weekend. And make sure another one, I'm going to be writing about one of them for gridnetworktv.com, so make sure to check that out. Another back-to-back for Shane Van Gisbergen.
Back-to-back for SVG, and of course, Matthew's article, gridnetworktv.com. Be sure to follow Grid Network TV, and of course, on YouTube, subscribe, hit the bell icon so you don't miss any of our programs, including Grid tonight. I know Kobe will be following some news that has been breaking since we've gone on the air with IndyCar, and of course, Nolan Siegels. We'll discuss a little bit more, but I'll throw it over to Kobe to start off the IndyCar portion of the show.
Thank you, Joe, and nice having you here again, Matthew. And the NTT IndyCar Series held two races at Iowa Speedway, which produced two different winners of Paddle Award, becoming the fourth different winner of the 2025 season and picking up Chevrolet's first win of the year. But in race two, Alex Palou and Honda swept the podium, with Scott Dixon and Marcus Armstrong finishing second and third, respectively. Palou extends his championship points lead to 129 over Award with 5 races remaining. With the win, the championship hunt has ended for many, as only 6 drivers would be left, assuming that Alex Palou is going to start all remaining 5 races. Last place finisher earns 5 points, and most of the driver could earn is 54 points, so a 49-point spread is possible. Depending on what happens in the next 2 races, Portland could be the race. The championship is decided, leaving 2 races afterward. Joe, was the win at Iowa for Alex Palou the moment he put one hand on the championship after finally getting the job done on the short oval? Now you can say that Alex Palou is not a one-trick pony anymore. Before you say, oh, he's going to go out and win on the road and street courses, but he hasn't gotten an oval win, and got the oval win in the biggest one of them all, the Indy 500. So he won on the Super Speedway, and now he's won on the last possible track that there is to win on the current IndyCar schedule, which is a short oval. You can say Alex Palou is definitely a complete IndyCar driver now.
Complete IndyCar driver. I feel the Indianapolis 500 win, I think, was a confidence boost, as in I could win at the biggest race of the year, the Indianapolis 500, where you have a grueling 500-mile race, all the media attention from around the world. There's no other event IndyCar has that brings this much attention. And he goes out there, gets the job done, and wins it. I mean, really, Barry Wanzer, Alex Palou, they just seem to be on such another level. They can't seem to make really any mistakes. Of course, Palou made that mistake in Mid-Ohio, so he could have easily had 2 consecutive wins in a row. I mean, he is just going to be hard to beat, and I feel for the field, they just got to accept that, okay, he has one hand on championship. I mean, really, if he is to finish, I believe it was 7th place or better for the remaining races, he has a championship. So the way he's been going, it seems like game over. I think he's has one hand firmly on that championship. Won't be long till he started have both hands on it. Might be in Portland. It just really depends on the competition. Pato O'Ward's now second in the points. He has to win. If he could keep that up, just keep a little bit of pressure, maybe just delay the inevitability of the Palou championship. But overall, the season Alex Palou is having one for the history books. I know it may not be the most exciting with different winners. I mean, MotoGP has more winners than IndyCar, but when you look back at it, it's like that was a championship season for the history books.
Yeah, definitely for the history books and for Alex Palou. I think he had one hand on the championship quite a while ago. If I'm being completely honest with you, Joe, it's just been remarkable to see what he's been able to do. From all the critics, including us here on Great Network, saying like, when is he finally going to win on an oval? Now he has two oval wins on his resume, and honestly, I didn't really feel confident in him winning this race today. Although did start on the poles, that's why I didn't pick a winner, given the fact he is, kind of struggle at these short ovals compared to other tracks on the schedule. Now he finally checked that box. So got to give a hand to him in the race that he had today. Although it seemed like Joseph Newgarden was going to be the one to end up winning that one. But we'll talk a little bit more about Newgarden in just a little bit. Yeah, but yeah, all kudos to Alex Palou and the job that number 10 team was able to do. And I think Will Buxton said what I really wanted to say. He said that we're witnessing greatness and history in front of our eyes. Give the man his dues and a championship renowned for its unpredictability. This is special. And, we talked about this before in the show, how IndyCar, is known for, being super competitive, and multiple different winners every season. Now you really just have one guy winning most of the races, and then you have Kyle Kirkwood, Scott Dixon, and Pato Award, as the other winners this year, but it's mostly been won by Alex Palou. So this is an extremely rare season of domination you don't always get in IndyCar, and it looks like Alex Palou is going to add yet another IndyCar championship to his trophy case. And I think that is just so amazing that Alex Palou, I believe I saw the stat earlier today. This is his 18th career IndyCar win in 93 starts. We know Pato O'Ward got the win in his 100 starts, and Alex Palou hasn't even hit 100 starts yet in IndyCar, and he's already won his 18th career race. So if him and this number 10 Chip Ganassi racing team can keep this level of domination going, for that, they could very well do it like for the next decade or so. If they can continue to win multiple races per season, who knows how many race victories Alex Palou will have at the end of the year. And I know Alex Palou still has many years to go in his career, but he is certainly on his way to becoming one of the all-time greats of the NTT IndyCar Series, and that's something no one should take lightly. He's not there yet, but he's certainly continuing to stack an impressive resume. And I think at the end of the day, when Alex Palou ends up retiring from IndyCar racing, we're probably going to be talking about him in the same sentence as the Mario Andretti's, the AJ Forts, the Scott Dixons of the world, because sky's the limit for this guy, and it's just so amazing to see what him and Barry Wanzer have been able to do. Yeah, I think Alex and Barry are the new Jimmy and Chad, right, of the IndyCar Series, because it seemed like that this whole number 10 team is going to go on a run, and I don't see anyone that could really stop them anytime soon. And now shifting gears, let's talk about something that happened in race one. And during race one, Nolan Siegel was running well before he crashed hard into the wall. And this morning, Aaron McLaren revealed that Siegel suffered a mild concussion and his number 16 didn't compete in race two today. According to Nathan Brown from the Indy Star, Siegel will be reevaluated by doctors in Indianapolis on Thursday to determine if he can race next weekend in Toronto. He added that McLaren will have a backup driver ready to go within the next 24 hours in case Siegel can't race. And early this morning, team principal Tony Kanaan got fitted inside Siegel's car with hopes of starting and parking the entry to receive points towards the leader's circle bonus at the end of the season. For those of you who are unaware what the leader circle is, the top 22 cars in the IndyCar's version of the owner points, they'll receive a huge bonus at the end of the season. So out of the full-time entries that we have in IndyCar, well, the chartered entries, you'll be able to get a bonus if you finish inside the top 22. So it was very important for that number 6 car to start today, since they entered the day 21st out of 22 cars in the leader circle. So today was definitely a huge blow for them, as IndyCar denied the request, as Indy Star reported, because they would have needed to know that Siegel was unavailable last night so they could schedule a special 15-minute refresher session for a replacement driver who would have been team principal Tony Kanaan. And Nathan Brown added that the potential backup drivers for Toronto include Teo Pourchaire, Ryan Hunter-Reay, Jack Harvey, and Linus Lundqvist, and who knows who could be calling Aaron McLaren. So, Joe, do you think IndyCar needs to reevaluate its role for replacement drivers, and who would you like to see in the number 6 Chevrolet if Siegel can't race in Toronto?
If we don't have Siegel in Toronto, I would lean toward Theo Pourchaire again. Give him the opportunity. I think everyone knows the story of what happened last year. Just the fact that he could be in the car, a street course. Granted, it's Toronto, a very tight street course where a lot of things could happen. Crashes, the walls are just right there. I think that's where you look at his experience. While it's limited compared to Jack Harvey, I think he could bring the car home in one piece. Linus Lundqvist, that would be really great to see on the track again. I just like to see him more in a full-time deal because at the end of the day, I mean, he was able to get podiums last year. I believe even on a pole. Just did not work out when it came to sponsorship and getting a ride for this year. So those are the two drivers I would like to see, particularly for the rules for replacement drivers. I think it would be nice if IndyCar was to have some sort of reevaluation to say, okay, you have a situation like at Iowa where two races that weekend. If there was something where the teams all knew that, okay, you have a situation, Nolan Siegel is going to potentially be sitting out of the race. We have a short list of drivers already approved by IndyCar. This is something I think every team could do, where it's just, hey, something happened to one of our drivers in race one, race two, here's who our backup driver is. So that way they are ready. Because I think that would have just made it a lot simpler for the team to just said, okay, Nolan Siegel had this hard crash. He's being evaluated. There might be some concussion syndrome, but guess what? IndyCar already has a list that Linus Lundqvist is our backup driver, or Ryan Hunter-Reay. Okay, they would automatically get that 15-minute session scheduled right away Sunday morning. So they're in a good spot to race. Problem solved. I think we just, have to consider that, especially for these doubleheaders. Granted, we don't have too many doubleheaders anymore, but I think that would be just a huge benefit for all the teams just to know that, okay, on these doubleheader weekends where there's a tight turnaround, we have a driver listed so IndyCar knows if something happens, we're prepared for the 15-minute session the next morning. Because worst case scenario, okay, Ryan Hunter-Reay or whoever does that 15-minute session, but good news, your primary driver does not have any concussion and is clear to drive. Well, guess what? He could drive. Win-win. And for car count, especially when you have 27 cars down to 26, I think it just makes more sense.
Yeah, honestly, Joe, when it comes to replacement drivers, I think IndyCar needs to go down the F1 route and have reserve drivers, required for every team. I think that would certainly, help out the situation as well. And I don't know if I go as far to say, we need to have like a test session like F1 does at the end of the year, in Abu Dhabi for rookie drivers and all of that. But in many respects, we've kind of seen that in IndyCar sometimes. I know we saw Jake Dennis from Formula E getting an Andretti IndyCar, and we saw Logan Sargent, come out of F1 get the test for Meyer Shank Racing. So we are seeing other, and also saw Felipe Nasr in a Penske IndyCar as well. So we are seeing other drivers get some lap times in IndyCar and all of that. But I think that if each team had a designated reserve driver, that would help make this process go a lot easier. And especially if we're like on a road and a street course, we typically have the morning warm-up session. So if this was a road or street course race, that would have been an easy, plug and play. If Nolan had been, suffered a concussion on a road and street course, you could have potentially got someone in there, then they run the laps in the morning session, then they're good, and then they're good to race. But I understand IndyCar wanting to be more cautious, especially since the ovals are way more dangerous than any road or street course in the NTT IndyCar Series. But I feel like in this case, look, when Kyle Larson was running the double, Tony Kanaan got behind the wheel of the Aaron McLaren car. So he does have some on-track laps in an IndyCar and an oval this year. And obviously, I don't think it probably would have been a good idea to approve Tony Kanaan to actually compete, run all the laps in the race. But I honestly don't see any harm in letting him, just start and park the car because, the leader circle is really important to these IndyCar teams that want to be in the top 22 because that huge bonus, goes a long way at the end of the year for their IndyCar programs. So I honestly think IndyCar is a little too strict in this area, especially since Kanaan had some laps on track in an IndyCar this year, although it was not in competition. I think if they had him, drop to the rear, start dead last, complete the first lap or so, and then just park it. I honestly think Tony Kanaan, still competent enough of a driver to be able to do that, and then call it a day and receive those 5 points towards the leader circle. So I honestly didn't completely agree with, the decision to deny Tony Kanaan in that area, but I do understand IndyCar, wanting to know, by last night so they can schedule, because I honestly don't know what they had planned, at Iowa Speedway leading up to the race, because I'm sure they really needed to schedule a 15-minute session there. And in regards to who I would like to see in the number 6 Chevrolet, assuming Nolan can't go, I'm with you, Joe. I think Teo Pourchaire would be a great option. And remember the situation with Teo Pourchaire and the situation he was in last year? He competed in Toronto last year, because you remember he was originally supposed to drive full-time for this team. But, the situation came when, Nolan Siegel brought some funding that the team needed. So Teo Pourchaire's contract was basically thrown out, and they put Siegel in the seat. And then Toronto weekend last year, Teo Pourchaire, he was actually in Europe on like Friday night, and then they called him and said, "Hey, we need you to fill in for one of our drivers." I think it was Alexander Rossi, right, Joe? I think Rossi suffered an injury to his hand or wrist,
Yep.
and like the practice session in Toronto, and then they on a Friday, and then they needed Teo Pourchaire to fly in, and so Friday night he's at home in Europe. And then he has to catch an unexpected flight to Canada. And then I remember Teo Pourchaire arriving to the track right before, they're going on the track. I believe it was either for it's the second practice or qualifying. Don't exactly remember which session it was. But, that was like a real unexpected call up for Teo Pourchaire. And he did as well as he could do, considering the fact that, he really had no time to prep at all for this track. Never seen it before. It was just basically just plug and play, hop in the car. And if he is able to get the call this time around, I think that would be really awesome for him. We got Simon Pagenaud, who's mentoring him right now and trying to get him back in the IndyCar series in some form. And Teo, although, I argued that the team treated him pretty poorly, when they originally signed him to this contract and then released him and put in another driver, for him to be able to come back and help out the Aaron McLaren team last year, only a short while after they had done him dirty, just shows you the professional that he is. And I'm sure he would be more than willing to fill in for the team again in a much better circumstance, because if they pick the substitute driver within the next 24 hours, and if it is Teo or anyone else, they'll have the entire week to prepare for it leading up to Toronto. So it wouldn't be like Teo's going in cold turkey, not knowing what to expect. And now with Alex Palou's win, the championship hunt is over for all three Team Penske drivers. In race 1, Pato O'Ward got around Joseph Newgarden on pit stops, led a Penske 2-3-4, preventing a podium sweep and a win for the captain. In race 2, Scott McLaughlin crashed out on lap 1 after getting collected by a spinning Devlin DeFrancesco. It looks like Will Power had another engine issue that derailed his day. Then untimely cautions bit Newgarden twice during green flag pit stops. Joe, with the championship out of picture and a new permanent leadership team in place that we discussed last Wednesday on Grid Tonight, do you think Team Penske solely focuses on building up for the 2026 season and next 5 races? Also, are you surprised that we had 2 races at Iowa and neither of them were won by the king of corn country, Joseph Newgarden?
Yeah, it was on the pre-race show. I said I had a sense that something was going to strike Joseph Newgarden and he would not get a win. My 2 pick winners originally was Colton Herta, but then after Saturday's race, I switched to Joseph Newgarden just because he looked so good. It looked like the Joseph Newgarden we anticipate to go out there and win. He just didn't get race 1 because of the pit stops with Pato O'Ward taking the best of it. And then this race is just bad luck for Joseph Newgarden. I mean, twice the caution comes out at the wrong time. Part of it is the product, Chevrolet, their fuel efficiency, not as great as the Honda, so they had to pit. Just so happened a Honda with right front tire from the same team and Ready Global having those issues, bringing the bad result. And then that last restart just seemed like he was missing something, 10th place finish. So for Joseph Newgarden, while the race weekend is bittersweet, as in, okay, we put everything together, we could have the great results. So many things have to go right to get those great results, and a lot of it were out of his hands. So I think while we had said they might be hitting that panic button, now I'm almost leaning towards the idea of, well, they got the race 1 results. Race 2, just things out of their luck. Keep working on that chemistry with the new leadership team, with the new engineer, making the team stronger and stronger. The championship's out of the picture. So just go out there and try to go for race wins. That's all you need to do, because now you're getting to the point where Alex Palou, he's going to start racing more conservatively, protecting the points lead, trying to wrap it up as soon as possible. you could race him more aggressive. I mean, we saw a little bit about that. I think it was, trying to recall, Kobe, if it was slight contact between Newgarden and Palou today during the race, turn 1 and 2. Can't remember off the top of my head, but
Yeah, I think it was slight contact.
Slight contact, just wheel to wheel. That's when Palou went a little high, but kept going. He could put himself in that situation, Newgarden, to just race everyone aggressive, try to end on a high note. And I'm feeling pretty good he could do that, especially when you have the ovals ahead, the Milwaukee Mile, Nashville. As for the rest of the team, Penske, folks, they have to figure it out. Willpower, 2 races with mechanical issues. They need to work on getting their stuff together. I feel that's probably what Jackson Lambro said 2 years ago, the weakest link when it comes to the Penske organization, because Newgarden has shown he could get the job done. Scott McLaughlin, if he didn't crash at qualifying, what could he have done? He clearly had the fastest car last night, from last, almost podium. Then here we are. He's moving up, but just gets caught up by Devlin DeFrancesco. I think they just need to focus solely, as you said, build up, build that chemistry, get ready. 2026, I anticipate it'll be strong.
Yeah, I think this season's obviously been quite a disappointment for Team Penske. But look, that 2026, I think that could be the year that Team Penske redeemed themselves. Because obviously they've had a lot of distractions going on. With the push to pass scandal the previous season, and then what happened. Post Indy 500 qualifying. Just been a dark cloud hanging above their head the last 2 seasons. I think if the new leadership team comes in, with like no drama, no nonsense approach, get back to being what we always used to be, Penske perfect. And I believe they can get back to being the team to beat. Right now, Chip Ganassi Racing and Alex Palou have been the team to beat. But I think, that they have talented drivers in their lineup that can get the job done. And after seeing how well Will Power, has been running this year, all things considered, outside of stuff that's not in his control, and especially in race 1 yesterday, I know he doesn't have a contract at this moment, but I can't really see why you would get rid of someone like Will Power, because he's still, very serviceable, still can go out there, compete, and get your race win. So, and Will Power hasn't shown any signs of slowing down. So I still think, he's proven that he's capable to be an IndyCar driver, especially a Penske driver. And then Scott McLaughlin, I really expected to see him take a huge step forward this year, but it's honestly been a few steps back. The Indy 5, we all know what happened at Indy, ended up crashing out hard in qualifying, then didn't even get to complete a lap in the Indy 500, crashed out on the pace lap there, and then crashed in qualifying yesterday at Iowa, set him back for both races. Yesterday, very impressive drive from McLaughlin. That's why I went with him for pick a winner today, thinking he could complete the first challenge. But unfortunately, his mistake on Saturday ended up costing him the day, because if he hadn't crashed out, he wouldn't have gotten caught up in Devlin DeFrancesco's mess there. So super unfortunate for him. And it's hard not to feel for Joseph Newgarden, right? Because it's been one of the most difficult seasons of his IndyCar career, probably more difficult than his rookie season in IndyCar, because Joseph, he's had so many things go wrong this year, and coming to Iowa Speedway, you think he'd be able to get someone to pick a winner point, because in the past, come to Iowa Speedway, this doubleheader, it was too easy pick a winner points, right? It was just as easy as Marquez winning in MotoGP right now, because Joseph Newgarden can get 2 easy points, and your name further up the leaderboard for the first time. But Joseph, unfortunate situation that it came down to the money stop on pit road on Saturday evening, ended up losing that spot to Pato, and couldn't do anything there. And then it was just so amazing how Joseph Newgarden was the guy to beat. And then as soon as he went down pit road, that's when the caution came out both times. That's just, extremely unlucky there, because I honestly think that if it wasn't for, the bobble on pit road yesterday or the untimely caution, Joseph Newgarden probably would have swept the weekend once again, and we would have been calling this Joseph Newgarden Speedway instead of Iowa Speedway. So real unfortunate for him, because those are 2 wins, that he saw slip away. But instead of hitting the panic button, I saw a lot of hope from Joseph Newgarden and his number 2 team that they have the speed, they have the pace, that where they can win. They just need luck to fall their way. I think that today Joseph Newgarden should have won that race, but just wasn't meant to be. I have no idea what Joseph Newgarden needs to do to finally get some luck on his side, but I definitely feel for him, because he comes so close after what's been a really challenging character building year. And now shifting gears from New Garden and Team Penske, let's talk a little bit about some of the other happenings this weekend. You know, while we're talking about Pato O'Ward getting his first one of the year, and he's now comfortably second in points. His race 1 win at Iowa was extra special because it occurred in his 100th career IndyCar start. Kyle Kirkwood crashed in race 1 when a tire went down and into the wall, and the same thing hurt his Andretti Global teammates Marcus Ericsson and Colton Herta in race 2, who also saw their race ends on the wall. And going back to Award, he's one of IndyCar's most popular drivers, and Iowa used to pack the house with plenty of people in attendance. Now without Hy-Vee sponsoring the event, we saw a much smaller crowd this year, as you probably saw on social media. We saw no VIP suites. You remember in the past, Hy-Vee had the red VIP suites, I believe, enter in turn 1. You know, that's not there. We also didn't have any concerts, no famous singer and songwriters in attendance. And the track social media accounts were not promoting the doubleheader at all. And this also reignited the conversations about ovals on the IndyCar schedule. Joe, how disappointing was it to see such a small crowd for both Iowa races? And to be fair, we looked like a lot more people in the stands for today's race than it was last night on Saturday. And is this an IndyCar problem, a sponsor problem, a track problem, or is it a mix of all of them? I was honestly really shocked to see how quickly the crowds have thinned out compared to what we saw just a few years ago.
It is shocking just how quickly, like you said, it went from packed stands, the VIP suite, drivers talking about how this is a event weekend we look forward to, we're excited about, to now this weekend. I just felt like this is almost a repeat of what we've seen, unfortunately, in the past of IndyCar, of great racing, but nobody's there, and we keep having this discussion. Even with back in the day when Robert Miller was still around, what do we need to do to get the fans to the stands? Well, with Iowa, we had the fans in the stands. A big thanks to Hy-Vee. They were sponsoring this. People were saying how you could go to every Hy-Vee and you knew IndyCar was coming to Iowa. The concerts, we've seen how a lot of events include some sort of other form of entertainment, such as the NASCAR race weekend in Chicago, which also brought in concerts. You have fan festivals, fan fairs, like amusement park rides, like the Ferris wheel at the Rolex 24. Other ways to engage fans to come to watch the race. And then it just seems like, okay, Hy-Vee left, and then we just go back to what did we do before? Well, we got a sponsor, 2 sponsors, 1 for each race. That's great. But what else was done? Why are we just saying, okay, we're not having the track try to activate, promote this event in a more big way? The 2 sponsors, I don't know what exactly is their public role. While Hy-Vee, everyone goes there to buy goods. I don't know about the sponsors for this year's event, if they're the kind where they're reaching out to customers left and right, or are they just more business to business or nonprofits? Wasn't sure how that all went down. And at the end of the day, if it's just a race, you're only going to bring in the loyal fans, which is great to see. But I just got to say, after years of this Hy-Vee doubleheader under the lights, great racing, it was very disappointing just to thought, okay, the first year Hy-Vee is gone, and this is the best we could pull off, this small gathering of fans to watch IndyCar racing. It just makes me think, okay, maybe this is just not going to work out long term. That's the painful part to say, because too often when it comes to the ovals, Michigan, great racing. But then we saw the decline from packed stands to then, did anyone show up for this race? Auto Club, great racing, but nobody showed up for this race. Here we are at another track. We used to have the packed stands. We used to have a sponsor that brought in everything to make this a success, and now we're back to square one again. I think IndyCar needs to step it up. Penske Entertainment saw the success. Yeah, do they have to spend more money? Okay, you might have to. Maybe you need to get a sponsor that's more willing to say, hey, we'll be throwing IndyCar merchandise all over our stores so people can see them. Maybe do some giveaways. Just get folks again to remember, hey, that IndyCar race you were at 2 years ago, 3 years ago, They're coming back. They haven't left. Come back. We'll love to see you at the track again. I'm hoping there is some work being done to save this event. Because Kobe, I know we always talk about we need more ovals in IndyCar. Mid Ohio could pull in the crowd. Portland pulls in the crowd. The street courses pull in the crowd. The Indianapolis 500 pulls the biggest crowd of them all. It's an oval. Gateway, Bommarito has done a great job sponsoring the event, keeping a good sized crowd. They need to do something to save Iowa because we cannot lose Iowa. We need a short oval. We don't need less ovals. So I'm hopeful everybody from Penske Entertainment, the track, and hopefully a new sponsor are looking at an opportunity to bring this event back to the masses.
Yeah, Joe. It seems like that this has been a great phenomenon that nobody's been able to figure out for the longest time in IndyCar. Like, people always want to see ovals on the schedule. There's already, a small number of ovals that IndyCar could even go to anyways. But despite people saying we need to have more oval tracks, nobody seems to show up for them. And I think it is quite a shame because traditionally, the ovals in IndyCar have been one of the most exciting races that you can see in IndyCar, more exciting than what we've seen on some of the road and street courses. And I know there was a lot of concerns, about the package heading into this weekend, thinking it was just going to be a processional race, with hardly any passing. But to our surprise, I think the race was a lot better than both races were a lot better than a lot of us and anticipated. So I didn't think the on-track product in both events were too bad at all. But yeah, I'm a little disappointed that, looking at the crowd on Saturday, I was like, wow, that's a lot of empty seats, and then you had a few fans here, a few fans there, and a few fans over there. But, it definitely looked different if you look at the crowd shots, from last year. But I mentioned the point about the concerts, Joe. You have to try to get people to the racetrack some way or somehow, because I hate to admit it, everybody here at Grid Network, we're all in the I guess group of diehard motorsports enthusiasts, but you have to try to attract your casuals as well. And as much as we love motorsports, we don't need a concert to go to the track. We'll just go to the track because we love the sport. But some people, but your casual fans out there, which motorsport series are always trying to rein in, which Formula One has done a great job in reining in the casual fans. Still don't know how they were able to do it, especially here in the United States. But IndyCar needs to figure out how to do this in their series, especially for the oval races. And I was looking at the list of performers we had last year, since I didn't remember which ones we had, and think about the two big names you had for the concert last year. You had Luke Combs and then Post Malone, two major stars in the music industry, having concerts. I'm sure there were quite a lot of people who honestly just came there for the concert, but attended the race anyways, which looks great from an optics perspective because you see a lot more people in the stands who were you're probably like, yeah, it's cool to check out the race and all of that, but, I'm just really here for the concert. And I think, unfortunately, that probably had a lot to do with the smaller crowd since there's no concert. Some of the casuals out there didn't really have a reason to go to the racetrack. And I think it's a mix of, beyond that, besides the concert. I think IndyCar needs to look at what they're doing. And honestly, I had to look up what their new sponsor is for this event, Suck Up Manufacturing Company. And it says that they're the world's largest family-owned and operated manufacturer of grain storage, drying, and handling equipment. So very local to the state of Iowa. So it's nice to see some local support there. And I'm not saying that they were a bad, partner for this event or anything, but it was just so amazing to see, what's going on this year, just in compared to what we saw from Hy-Vee in the past, bringing those concerts, and they did a lot to promote IndyCar. And to be fair, I don't know what Suck Up Manufacturing Company were able to do with the promotions of this event, but overall, I really hope that this is an issue, that can eventually be solved someday, because IndyCar deserves so much better. The racing is, for the most part, it's been really good, and to see a smaller crowd like that on an oval, very, very disappointing. And I hope this doesn't mean that IndyCar at Iowa is going to, fall off the schedule entirely. But if it doesn't, Joe, I'll be honest, I would not be surprised if this is just a single event next year instead of a double header, because based on the crowd size, I can't say you can justify, having a double header. So if it loses a race, I wonder if the schedule just shrink by one, or maybe this could go to another, track, looking for a date on the schedule. I know Mexico City's been rumored for IndyCar for the last several months. Maybe one of the Iowa dates could go to Mexico City earlier in the year, and then Iowa becomes a single event. But I think that none of us want to see Iowa fall off the schedule entirely. And I believe we have comment in the chat, Joe, if you can put it on the screen. And Denver says should have an ACDC in Iowa that would pull a crowd. Oh, yeah. If you could get, I guess, any band, any singer, songwriter, performer out there, that certainly would have brought more of a crowd, as we saw last year with Luke Combs and Post Malone. And he said Iowa Speedway need a repave, I believe that's what you're saying. Bring back Richmond or Dover. I have a feeling, if you brought them to Dover, the G forces they'd be going around, that might be a little too much for IndyCar or Dover. But Richmond, the IndyCar was supposed to go to Richmond, and I believe in 2020, but COVID derailed that, and we haven't been able to get back to Richmond ever since. Would have definitely been cool to see IndyCar Richmond. Maybe that's a place they can return to in the future. And Joe, if you don't have anything else to add with on this discussion, IndyCar, I believe we'll move on to Supercars and IMSA.
Only thing I have to add is I would personally like to see IndyCar Dover. I remember the Indy Racing League, but yeah, the G Forces, that race, if you could find it on YouTube, somebody probably has a full race there. Maybe the IndyCar channel. Battle of attrition, a lot of cars DNFing. It will be hard. And then, yeah, us here, I remember Portland, they had a concert following the race, but I was there for the race. I didn't know much about the country singer that they had. So, I mean, but to get the stands full and to expose potentially casual fans, bringing their kids or somebody that could then get into motorsports, that's the big goal. And I'm hopefully the sponsors all work together with IndyCar, track promoter, get more fans in the stands.
Yeah. And we'll be sure to follow the future of IndyCar at Iowa here on Grid Network, because we should be at least a few months away from getting the 2026 NTT IndyCar Series schedule. We'll see if Iowa doubleheader will stay next year, will it drop down to one race, or if it disappears altogether. But we know one thing, IndyCar still has a lot of work to do in terms of maintaining the long-term health of their racing series. And now another racing series we're going to look at is the Repco Supercars Championship, as Brock Feeney continues to separate himself from the rest of the Supercars field after dominating the Townsville 500 weekend. The AAA Red Bull Ampol racing driver, who won 2 of 3 races on the streets of Townsville with Brody Kostecki from Shelby Power Dick Johnson Racing, taking the race 1 win. Feeney now has 10 wins in 22 races and 10 poles, while teammate Will Brown still has 1 win and 1 pole, with Feeney holding a 220-point lead heading into Queensland. He looks destined to win the Sprint Cup title and officially secure his spot in the Supercars version of the playoffs, which has been called the finals. After 10 wins and 9 wins in the last 12 races, is there any driver out there who can stop Brock Feeney, or do you think others will have to hope for the playoff field reset to slow him down?
That's the hope, I think, is the playoff reset's going to help them out, and that's going to be a tough break for Feeney, just because he's having such a season that we've seen in the past, a driver like Shane Van Gisbergen, Scott McLaughlin just dominate en route to the championship. Brock Feeney is easily now that driver this year, and it's just something else. We're going to have a new playoff format, and we're going to be reset. And if he's running as strong as he is, great. He's going to be hard to beat. But what if he has a couple of bad races? Then you have somebody like Will Brown, Brody Kostecki, just stepping it up. Cam Waters, he's always been one of those drivers where it's like when he delivers, he could get the job done. Just sometimes he just can't get it done. Chas Mostert, I've been losing confidence in him the last few weeks. I think this is really Brock Feeney's championship. But as you said, Kobe, we get to the reset. He needs to continue being strong. There's no reason why he can't do it, but it doesn't take much, and you could find yourself out of the points lead with some bad luck and some poor races, while drivers like Brody Kostecki and Will Brown rise up.
Yeah, looking at the season Brock Feeney's having right now, it reminds me of some supercar seasons we have in the past. It almost looks like he could go on a run of domination that we saw in the past from Scott McLaughlin, or recently, Shane Van Gisbergen when he was running full time in supercars. And if this was under the old format, and how they decided champion, 220-point lead, and then you have a handful of race weekends left, we would probably be thinking, if Brock Feeney continues to run like this the next 2 or 3 race weekends, he might just have one hand on the championship. But no, it's not going to happen like that now. It's really crazy now that you have Brock Feeney, who's, already has 10 wins this year and looks like a guy to beat by the widest margin. And at the end of the day, once we have the very first version of the Supercars playoffs, the field is going to be reset and everyone else can catch up to Brock Feeney. But even then, I think it's going to be really hard to slow him down. Like, despite the reset, I still think Brock, can win races and advance to the next round and get to the Adelaide Grand Final, and just be consistent and close out the season and a strong year because, Supercars, I believe they're going to be 3 races on the streets of Adelaide to end the season. So winning is going to matter, being dominant is going to matter, but more importantly, consistency is going to be the thing there for Brock Feeney if he's able to make it to the final round of the finals there for the Adelaide Grand Final. But I think Brock is going to be hard to beat regardless whether you do the reset or not, because he is the standard. And I think Will Brown said this in a post-race interview. I can't remember if he said it for sure, but I think he said something like along the lines, that there's going to be like a reset coming later in the season. And, in regards to like looking at the teammate battle right now, where Feeney has 10 wins, 10 poles, while Brown, the defending champion, hasn't had a dominant year compared to his teammate Brock Feeney. Where I think it does provide some hope, but I still think Brock Feeney is going to be really hard to beat for this year's Supercars Championship. And from a competitive standpoint, it will be really disappointing if Brock dominates this season and finds a way to lose this. And now I'm going to shift gears to the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, which raced at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. That race ended under caution behind the safety car, following the final restart of the 2-hour 40-minute race. Inter-Europol competition driver Tom Dillman had something go wrong with his number 43 LMP2 car and crashed out of the overall lead into the tire barriers. The medical team arrived at the scene and placed Dillman on a stretcher and into an ambulance, who gave everyone a thumbs up. And in a statement after the race, the team released a statement saying the incident wasn't Dillman's fault and they'll have to investigate the technical issue that caused the car to crash. But it said Dillman is okay, and Dillman also posted on his social media that he's going to be fine and that he'll update us on his condition later on. So really good to see that Tom Dillman is doing well, considering how scary that crash was, and with him crashing out of the overall lead. This meant that the number 99 AO Racing prototype of Dane Cameron and PJ Hyatt won in LMP2 overall, and despite the Dragon livery, with no GTP class in action this weekend, so LMP2 got a chance in the spotlight, racing for the overall win. And then the number 81 Dragon Speed Ferrari won in GTD Pro with Albert Costa and Giacomo Altaway. Then in GTD, number 45 Wayne Taylor Racing Lamborghini took class honors with Danny Formal and Trent Hinman. And IMSA will return to action with all 4 classes on August 3rd at Road America.
A lot of racing going on. A couple more, especially with the grid ranking. Marc Marquez in MotoGP secured another MotoGP sweep, winning both the sprint race and the Grand Prix. Marc Marquez has won 4 sprints and 4 Grand Prix races in a row. He leads the MotoGP driver standings by 83 points, allowing him to essentially, he could skip 2 race weekends and retain the points lead still. MotoGP is now halfway through their season. The championship picture still can change, but at the end of the day, the way Marc Marquez is looking, won't be long till you start eliminating riders from the Riders' Championship. For Formula E, a different story. All the riders have been eliminated except one. Oliver Rowland is your 2025 ABB Formula E World Champion. In his Nissan, he wrapped up the championship this weekend at Berlin, where we saw Jaguar, Mitch Evans, Nick Cassidy, Jaguar sweep. Big weekend for Jaguar after a dreadful season, just trying to get some positive momentum. Overall, championships out of the reach for them, because Oliver Rowland is now the 10th different driver to be a Formula E champion out of the 11 seasons of Formula E. So only driver to still be a repeat champion was John-Eric Verne. And now, with 1 race weekend left at London, no championship scenarios, it's all wrapped up. Oliver Rowland, congratulations to him and the Nissan team on claiming a championship. ABB FIA Formula E world champion. That leads us to the grid ranking. Grid ranking week 15. Calculations are just about done, but we could tell you this. Another week of Alex Palou leading the grid ranking. He leads Marc Marquez, who is third in the grid ranking, by 4.9 points total. Sebastian Ogier, still in second place, running part-time. He has not fallen out of the top 5 of the World Rally Championship grid rating, so he's still in the grid ranking. Second place, both INDYCAR and MotoGP are halfway through their season and have one person dominating their respective series. MotoGP has had 5 different winners, though, compared to INDYCAR with 4 different winners. Then you look at outside the top 10, of course, Oliver Rowland, he has dropped out of the top 10 picture. And one of the big things was Alex Palou claiming another win and then a top 5 finish on Saturday. It is now mathematically impossible for any Formula E driver to claim the grid ranking world championship. Alex Palou has eliminated all of them from contention. The last time we had 2 Formula E drivers in the top 10, 2023. This year, it looks like Rowland might be the only one and might be the only Formula E driver in the top 15 of grid ranking. Kobe, in all the years we followed Formula E, we've talked about how the wheel of destiny, when it was just so random who was going to win. Then last year, it looked like it was going to be Cassidy. Then Portland, the curse, went downhill. This year, Oliver Rowland just seems to have, through consistency and domination at times, just taken this championship and ran away with it. How are you going to remember the 2025 Formula E season?
I think I'm gonna remember this current Formula E season as a year that Oliver Rowland proved that he is that guy. Because I'll be honest with you, in the past year, I really thought Oliver Rowland was just an average, driver at best. I never thought that he was anything, super special, so to speak, on the racetrack. And I remember during the preseason, Joe, in your own words, you were saying that you needed to see a little bit more from Oliver Rowland, because yes, he had a strong season than last year, and all of that, but that was just one season, and we wanted to see if he could back it up. I know he finished inside the top 5 in the points last year, and he's done it much better. End up clinching this year's Formula E World Championship, and I think Oliver Rowland proved that if you give him the right car, that he can go out there and perform and win your races and championships, and which he's done. I know across the board in Formula E, a lot of the drivers have been really inconsistent this year, with finishes outside of the points and retirements across the board. But Oliver Rowland, out of all of them, has been the most consistent out of all the drivers. And he's also won more races than the other drivers in the series this year. So got to give a testament to him and what he's able to do this year. And I think once he's officially crowned, I mean, he's already clinched the championship. But once we get through the London E Prix doubleheader, and when he's officially crowned this year's Formula E champion, I think it's time for all of us to put some respect on his name, because he truly earned this championship and proved a lot of people wrong about his abilities on the racetrack.
Yeah, that was a thing. Like when we were in the preseason and we saw Oliver Rowland had that strong second half of 2024, I was thinking, well, that's great, but step it up. Show me what you could do. We know had he not been sick in Portland, championship picture could have been a little bit different. But I feel like in the past, that Nissan team was just not exactly there. Well, they stepped it up big time. Just taking, it almost felt like they sort of took the energy out of the championship battle early on by just going out there dominating with wins, podium finishes, being in the right place, right time. I mean, he finally got a DNF this weekend, but then he still wrapped up the championship. And overall, what an effort by Oliver Rowland. I think this puts him up there as a driver that, just like the others, could go for a second championship in Formula E, try to tie John-Eric Verne. At the end of the day, Formula E, we'll have to wait and see. Overall, I'll remember this season as an okay season. I think what sort of made it a little bit hard to follow this year is you had a championship that Oliver Rowland had control of. Mitch Evans, if it wasn't for the win this weekend, I would have just said I think he should be removed from Jaguar. They started the season so great, and then it was just nothing from that Jaguar team. Nick Cassidy, he just had nothing most of the season, just lousy season. Finally, he got 2 wins. Seems like Jaguar is starting to get things going the right direction. But then we also know McLaren, this is their last season. They're going to be heading out. What's going to be the next era of Formula E racing? It's going to be very interesting to see how it all shapes up. But I think this season, it'll be remembered as an all right manner. Not exactly the most thrilling season, but for Oliver Rowland, the Nissan team, this is a season they'll always remember. 2025, just going out there in a series that's notoriously unpredictable and just taking control and taking home a championship. That's going to be their shining moment. I think it's time for our shining moment now.
I said, well, Joe, before we get to the shining moment, I wanted to throw a quick Formula E follow-up question for you about some news that came out recently. You know, McLaren, you know, you mentioned pulling out of Formula E at the end of the season. So so ironically, their home race, the London E-Prix, is going to be the last race for this McLaren Formula E team before they shift gears to their hypercar project in the World Endurance Championship. And we recently learned, you know, that while McLaren wanted to try to keep this team going, you know, under a different brand, you know, not the McLaren factory brand, but try to have someone else take over the entry. But we've learned recently, you know, that McLaren could not find a buyer, you know, for this team. So unfortunately, it's just going to end up shutting down. And we talk about, you know, the next generation of Formula E in the future of this series. So Joe, I wanted to throw this over to you right quick. Do you think it's concerning that, you know, that no one wanted to buy the McLaren Formula E team and we're just going to lose 2 cars just like that?
Yes, it is a concern because the grid is down to 22. We're going to be down to 20. We used to have for a while grids of 24 in Formula E. So we are seeing where it looks like there is a bit of a negative trend when it comes to the interest of this team. Now, we've always heard some of the discussion has been, well, with Formula E, they're sort of limiting the ability of the teams to advance everything. Mainly it's just the powertrains. From the powertrains, you know, that's where the power gets down to the ground. That's where you could do a lot of innovations, but they seem to be a bit more limited. The battery capacity. I mean, how long have we been talking about, oh, the in-race pit stop where they recharge the battery? I remember the first year they were talking about that's why Portland's on the calendar. They have a pit road. They could do that. Never debuted until this year. I do feel like there is a little bit of a concern that, okay, Formula E, how much are you really allowing the teams to develop? And especially if more and more car manufacturers are switching to electric. We know some places, 2030, maybe 2035, you can't sell electric cars. I know California has some laws like that. Oregon is looking into doing that too. You want to be somewhere where you could push that envelope and develop a lot more. Is Formula E that answer? It could easily be that answer. But of course, what happens when you allow teams to open up the capacity of developing their own stuff? Potentially bigger gaps between the first place team and the last place team. You don't have that formally. I mean, Dan Tickton finally got a podium, had a good season this year, and a team that last year and the year before was just lousy. I do think this is something Formula E, the leadership team, has to look into because, yeah, 2021, they had 24 cars on the grid. Then it's down 22, now down to 20. You got to have interested buyers because the teams, that's always been their bragging part. They had Mercedes, they have Jaguar, they got BMW's out, Audi. I mean, you gotta have some of these big names there. Porsche's in there, but we've lost Mercedes. We're losing McLaren. Come on, we need to do something about this. We can't have more of this exodus. And I'm hopeful Formula E starts looking at this more seriously.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be interesting to see what the future of Formula E holds as we go into a new era of Formula E racing. Definitely a shame to lose the McLaren brand. And unfortunately, they weren't really getting what they thought they were going to get out of the series. And it's even more unfortunate, they couldn't find anyone to buy this team and keep it going in the hands of a privateer. But yeah, as Joe said a little while ago, it's time for our Grit One Shining Moment from this racing weekend. We had a lot of racing to discuss from all over the world this week. Let us know down in the chat below, whether live or on replay. What's the one thing that stood out to you most this weekend? And Joe, I'll start with you. What's your one shining moment?
Believe it or not, my shining moment, and this what we talked about a little bit during the first part of the show, where we're talking about NASCAR and the bracket challenge. I'm giving my shining moment to Ty Dillon, the driver to number 10, for doing what he's doing and just really making the most out of this NASCAR bracket challenge. After that race out of Atlanta, where my bracket was pretty much busted in the worst possible way, and we saw a lot of memes of people, okay, my bracket's busted. I don't care about this. People throwing away their printed out brackets like, well, it's over. And we're just one race in. We were on the show talking about how it was ruined. Most people's brackets were busted and nobody's going to really be following it. But this is where you have a driver and a team who miraculously beat Denny Hamlin. Ty Dillon steps up, shows a little bit of his character after the land racing. I just beat you, favorite driver, to the Denny Hamlin fans. And Denny Hamlin responds, yes, you did. He then goes out to the next race weekend. He then has what Jonathan Fields called another clapback. And now this is getting to the point where we want to see what is he going to do next. I know watching TNT's post-race coverage, I really wanted to see that Ty Dillon interview. We didn't see it, but we're going to probably find on social media whatever his one-liner was. At the end of the day, this is a great way where traditionally we don't talk about Ty Dillon on this program just because they're mid-pack. We're focused on the front pack. But now this allows that team, more media attention, potentially $1 million bonus. But even then, just the fact that their team is getting more coverage for their sponsors, their team's getting more attention, I think this has been a big win for that team. Even if Dover, they're eliminated because John Hunter Nemechek gets the best of them, or in the championship round between Ty Gibbs, Tyler Reddick. This is something I think a lot of people are going to sort of remember when this first championship bracket, the driver that really been stealing the headlines, making the most of it, has been Ty Dillon. What an effort. That is my shining moment.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to these bracket challenges and tournaments, people tend to love the Cinderella story. And I've been following college basketballs for many years, and I remember some of the great Cinderella stories. Like you had George Mason in the mid 2000s. Most recently, you had like your St. Peter's and Loyola Chicago making deep runs in the NCAA tournament. Then you have your 16 seeds upsetting your number one seeds. I remember when that school from Maryland, Baltimore County, when they end up winning their first round game as a 16 seed, I believe they took down Virginia, if I remember correctly. That was quite a thing there. People love when the little man can go out there and take down the big dogs in the game. And I think that's why a lot of people resonate with what Ty Dillon's doing right now, because this is a true Cinderella story. A lot of people would not think you have a 32 seed go out there and doing what he's doing now, end up making a deep run in this, and we'll see if he can claim that $1 million bonus at Indianapolis, if he's lucky enough to get past Dover. And my one shining moment, got to give it to the man who's been dominating the road courses this year, Shane Van Gisbergen. It's just so incredible to see what he's doing right now in the Cup Series, to leave his day job in Australia as a Supercars driver. I know SVG could have continued to stack his impressive resume in Supercars, continuing to win championships, the Bathurst 1000. But after accomplishing everything there is to accomplish in Supercar, he took a huge risk to put his reputation on the line to come over here to the United States to race at the top level of stock car racing. And we have heard a lot of the drivers talk about time and time again, it's so hard to win in the NASCAR Cup Series. And for SVG to have 3 wins this year and 4 in all after winning Chicago in 2023, 4 Cup Series wins, 36 years old, didn't have a background in stock cars at all, and to have as many wins as he has right now and continuing to get better on the oval, it's really rare what we're watching right now. And I think that we need to appreciate what we're seeing from this guy, because a lot of drivers in this position wouldn't be able to do what he's doing right now. Honestly, don't think we appreciated Juan Pablo Montoya enough and what he was able to do during his time in NASCAR. I don't even think we appreciated Marcus Ambrose enough for what he was able to do. And I hope people will take the time and appreciate what we're seeing from SVG, because I think Kyle Larson was talking about him over the weekend. And he said that if SVG can, figure out the ovals, he'd be dominant. And it's going to be interesting to see how Shane continues to progress on the ovals, if he can become a guy who can potentially compete for the wins in the Cup Series on the ovals in the future. We'll see how he goes there. But right now, he is the guy to beat on the road and the street courses, and it's going to be really hard for the Cup Series drivers to beat him moving forward. And even Chase Briscoe even said after the race that he wonders if this what other NBA players felt like to compete against Michael Jordan in his prime. Yeah, because the other drivers feel like they're basically just racing for rest of the best at this point, because Shane is so far ahead of them on road courses. And this has been so amazing to see, one of the world-class drivers, from Supercars come over to America and do what he's doing right now. It's just been remarkable to watch how skilled this guy is on the road courses. And it's been fun to follow his NASCAR journey when he came over here last year to race in the Xfinity Series, and then now full-time in the Cup Series. Got 3 wins this year, 4 career Cup wins in total. And if he figure out the ovals, be more competitive there, watch out. Never know what can happen with Shane Van Gisbergen. But I think you have to say that, he's trending in the right direction in his first full season as a Cup Series driver.
Trending in the right direction. SVG, what a season. In the chat room, just replace the Cup field with supercar drivers on road courses in NASCAR. Well, that could be good for some of those smaller teams. Still, I think some of those teams, like, they'll need a lot, because SVG just on another level. Be really interesting to see.
Yeah, and Joe, one thing I wanted to add on that, one thing that's different from SVG compared to some of the other road course ringers that we've seen in the past in NASCAR, SVG is one of the very few who had race winning equipment, right? Because a lot of the other road course ringers, they were either in like mid-pack equipment or driving for an underfunded team where, they just elevated the performance. But this is the first time we've seen a guy who is a true superstar on road courses come over here and have a top car. No, when Pablo Montoya was Ganassi, they were fast, at certain tracks, and other tracks, not as fast, but you wouldn't necessarily consider, Ganassi in the Montoya era, to be a top team. And then when Marcus Ambrose, was with JTG Doherty and Richard Petty Motorsports, they were never a top team. And it makes me wonder if we had, let's say, if we had seen Juan Pablo Montoya in a Hendrick car, or Marcus Ambrose in a Penske car, or even a Gibbs car, like, and in this day of age where we have a lot more road courses, I can imagine, they might have been able to do some of the similar things we've seen from SVG and go out there and completely obliterate the competition. Yeah, I would have loved to see Montoya and Ambrose compete in the next gen era. I think they would have been superstars on road courses right up there with SVG.
And of course, more road courses too. So that would have been really fun to see how that all would have shaken up. Of course, with that said, we are now out of time. We want to thank everyone for tuning in. Friendly reminder, Grid Encore is not tomorrow. It is on Tuesday. Ben Schneider traveling back from Sonoma. We'll get the lowdown from him about the ARCA Xfinity Series, plus Indy Next recap as well on Grid Encore Tuesday, right here to the Grid Network. And of course, a big thank you to our Patreon investors, Colin Deschelle, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew, for investing in the Grid Network through Patreon. Link in the video description, so you can go to the Patreon page, set your monthly investment, and we'll thank you on the air, put your name on the leaderboard. And of course, YouTube, Super Chat, Buy Me a Coffee. And we're just coming up after the show. Matthew Bro will have his article on gridnetworktv.com. Check out gridnetworktv.com, see the bios of all our team members, past articles, video clips, and of course across social media at Grid Network TV. where you can find the grid ranking. That'll be updated shortly. The Grid Endurance Performance Index updated on Wednesday on Grid Tonight, and pick a winner, which will go up as well. With that said, thank you everyone for tuning in. For Matthew, who was here earlier, and for Kobe, I'm Joe. You all have a wonderful night. We'll see you Tuesday for Grid Encore.